Vanessa, that really hurt my feelings. And I have to be honest with you, I'm actually starting to rethink our friendship.
Hey listeners, no need to be alarmed. This recording with Jessica Cook, relationship expert, is going to end well. We'll talk all about relationship resuscitation and repair. Welcome to Real Over Ideal. I'm your host, Vanessa Gorelkin, and I'm straight up alarmed by the way people are relating to each other lately. If you know me personally, you know I've got opinions with a capital O. Real Over Ideal podcast, however, isn't the place for hot takes on politics or world events. This is a podcast about mental health and wellness, so neutrality, nuance, and practical solutions are our focus. And hey, before we get into it, if you like hearing a podcast that doesn't tell you to think positive or get your hustle on, please share this episode with a friend who might like it. And we always appreciate a 5-star review. Now let's get on with the show. In the last few years, I've been noticing a lot of arguing, canceling, and friendship breakups that feel chaotic and frankly kind of heartbreaking. I wanted to invite a guest who could help us sort through our feelings and maybe help either with some relationship resuscitation or lessons in how to draw the line when our efforts were successful in theory, but the relationship needs to end anyway. Today, I'm joined by Jessica Cook, a licensed therapist who specializes in couples and family therapy, where conflict resolution is an obvious area of skill. Jessica holds a master's in counseling psychology from Temple University and a bachelor's in psychology from Muhlenberg College. Her clinical work focuses on helping people navigate ruptures in trust, rebuild connection, and communicate more effectively, whether in romantic partnerships or within families. Welcome to Real Over Ideal podcast, Jess. Is there anything you'd like to add before we dig in?
That's perfect. It sounds crazy when somebody else talks about it.
That's you. Let's dig in to some questions about relationships. I probably should ask first, in a relationship, what is a boundary? What does that mean?
Boundary is setting limits to what is permitted within your space. It doesn't mean you're trying to control the other person's behaviors. When I think of boundaries, I think of I don't allow somebody to speak to me in that way. I don't allow this topic in my sphere. I dictate the way that we speak to each other, the way that certain topics are broached or not broached. So, for instance, if you say, we're not going to call each other bad names when we argue, you can't control if the other person does it. But what you can say is, we're going to take a break from this conversation until you're ready to speak to me in a different way.
That makes a lot of sense. I really feel very strongly about name calling. It's one of the more difficult things that people do because it really shuts things down. How do you define the difference between canceling someone and having boundaries with someone?
Canceling someone, so extreme, it's multifaceted, right? Because there are some people you kind of have to decide if those boundaries are applicable to different relationships. There are different things I'll allow from my father versus a friend. There are different behaviors that I begrudgingly might be okay with from one relationship or another. The way that we speak to each other, the way it has gone to this crazy extreme where the second you don't agree with somebody, you are offended by them or they hurt your feelings, you just cut them off. And that's not a boundary to me. I mean, certainly there are people that you decide this person is toxic, I can't have them in my life. But that seems to be people's go-to in the current climate.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of name calling out there today, and it almost feels like people jump in and they just get to name calling before they think it through. I wonder if there's a way to help people who are feeling hot, where a boundary feels like it was violated or they're ready to cancel someone, back to that original thought. How can you help yourself in a moment where you're about to say whatever name you might
Yeah.
call?
I love this question. And I feel like it's like a large majority of the work that I do with people individually and as a couple or a family, which is reflection. You even said it, you get hot. Recognizing the signs within yourself of I'm no longer responding, I'm reacting. So understanding the difference between I'm in my rational part of my brain and I'm able to decide how I'm going to proceed in this conversation versus I am no longer in control of how I speak, how I act, and I'm going to wind up cursing. And whatever your version of name calling is, for some people, that's complete shutdown and stonewalling. Everybody has a different extreme reaction that they might go to. But noticing for yourself, I'm getting to this point. And it's really a lot of trial and error. I mean, for myself, it all happened quick. And I feel like the work has been how do I slow that process down? How do I notice when it's happening before I say the thing? How do I remove myself from the conversation before it's too late and I've said something damaging? If it's really bad, I'll get in the shower. I'll put ice on my face, something to physically alter my state because it shocks your system back into homeostasis.
When you're getting really hot, I think when you do that, you kind of lose your way. It's one of those reactions in your nervous system that shows up.
Yeah, and then the goal is to get to a place where you notice what's going on in your nervous system and then you're able to ask yourself questions. So if it's hysterical, it's hysterical. I don't like this saying because I hate the word hysterical. It has so many bad connotations, but for lack of a better one right now, if it's hysterical, it's historical. More often than not, if you're having a huge reaction to something that may not be worthy of that reaction, if the reaction is disproportionate to the stimuli, it's likely that this is invoking something for you that is reminiscent of a past issue that is unresolved within your relationship, within a different relationship, whatever. It's touching on something that's a bigger issue for you. If you're somebody who is really reactionary to somebody not cleaning properly in your mind, it's likely that that's like a bigger thing than just cleaning, right? So you have to be able to ask yourself questions. And in order to ask yourself questions, in order to access a higher level of thinking, you have to bring yourself physically down. I really like to explain it to clients as top brain and bottom brain. When you're in your top brain, you're able to access this higher level of thinking. How am I acting right now? Where is this coming from? Is this how I'd like to behave? What's my goal in this conversation? How is my behavior getting me further or closer to that goal? To a certain extent, you're physically feeling those feelings. You're not in control anymore of your words. You're in your bottom brain. You're not able to access rational, critical thinking, which I think is where so much of us are at right now, whether it's not to get into political conversations, but whether it's the divisiveness of our political world right now, emotions, whatever it is, I feel there's this increase in the world right now of being hot quickly. And that's so
Yeah.
damaging because you're no longer thinking, like you told me earlier, to remember that my fiance is my best friend and treat conversations like that, treat conflict like that. You're not able to do that with how divisive the world is right now. And I feel like that really is the crux of my work with couples, especially.
Let me repeat it. If it's hysterical, it's historical. I've never heard that before, and I get it. Hysterical has connotations that we don't really like, but if we just take it out of the realm of thinking hysterical, a horrible word, my initial response was you could wind up in a lot of trouble for what you say. So if you're losing your temper, it will be history.
And if your history is, I need to be on the defense, you're going to say hurtful things. You're going to be jabbing at your partner or your friend, whoever the conflict is with. If you're somebody who is used to having to hide, you're going to shut down. You're going to stonewall that person, whether it's intentional or not. You're not going to be able to work through conflict because you're hiding from the conflict. If somebody whose history tells you to run, you're literally going to run away from the conflict. But
It's kind of like a fight or flight reaction, right?
right, either way, you're no longer able to access critical thinking, conflict resolution, because you're in a place of survival. And if you're in a place of survival, what that tells the person that you're talking to is this is not a safe place for us to speak. And that puts them in a certain position too, given their own histories. Ultimately, you've started acting in a way that makes this like war, not just a conversation. And that brings the temperature up in the room.
Absolutely. You were talking also about some physiologic solutions, taking a cold shower, using an ice pack, splashing water on your face, because you're activating to the diving reflex, where if your face is cold, your heart rate's coming down. And so everything is less hot. Heat seems to be a big thing. Heat, I think there's more murders where, where there's heat in like in the summer.
That's true in Philly.
Yeah, I think it's a social psychology fact. Now we've reached the part of the podcast called If You Try This, You Won't Die. And this is the segment of the show where we offer simple strategies to make life a bit more manageable, with the reminder that it's okay to make small changes. Changes don't have to be scary. Remember, it's just a try, not a tattoo. Whatever we say here, you could try it. And if you try this, you won't die. My question for you is, do you have any tips for listeners about how to determine when a relationship can be saved?
I've been thinking a lot about this. You have to ask yourself really important questions. You have to lean toward vulnerability. And that's such a difficult thing, especially when you are feeling unsafe, threatened within a relationship, and you're starting to doubt, is this relationship savable? You're already kind of in this place where you're probably starting to put up walls. But in order for you to really and truly evaluate and then make a decision based off of the true and honest data around you, you cannot have those walls up. You have to be able to say, how do I feel about this person? How would I feel if they were gone? And you have to be able to talk to them about it. So we talked about canceling. It's the opposite of that, basically. I have to be able to say to you, Vanessa, that really hurt my feelings when we did X, Y, and Z. And I have to be honest with you, I'm actually starting to rethink our friendship. I don't even know if we can keep going because I'm so hurt by X, Y, and Z. And this relationship matters to me. And I want to give us the opportunity to make this better and to hear what you have to say to see where we go from there. But ultimately, I think two things. One, you have to decide if this is something collaborative, right? So what I mean by that is this something I can work on with Vanessa, or I can at least have a conversation with Vanessa about if we continue our friendship? Or is this something where I'm like, I have to do this reflection on my own and decide if this person is okay in my life or not? But more often than not, I would imagine, and in from my work professionally and just as a human being on this earth, there is room for these conversations almost always. And almost every relationship is savable. It doesn't mean that it's going to look the same way tomorrow. It might mean that the definition of the relationship is different, or it might mean that the relationship grows even closer because of the rupture repair cycle. But either way, you have to be vulnerable and it won't kill you. The worst thing that'll happen is that maybe you feel a little embarrassed. Maybe you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that, whatever. But the best thing that happens is that somebody says to you, I had no idea you felt that way. And I actually have been feeling this way about our relationship. And I could feel something was off, but I didn't know what to do about it. And I'm so glad we have this conversation. Let's go somewhere from here. That's the best thing that happens. The worst thing that happens is you're embarrassed. But if you don't lean into vulnerability, you write off relationships without actually knowing if it was savable. And then 5 years from now, you're going to look back and say, I lost that friend. And I wish that I wish I could redo it. I wish I could have been honest.
I think that it's been a really hard few years in terms of the way people get along. And it makes me wonder two things. The first one is, what is the rupture repair cycle in a relationship, if you can describe that? And the second question I have is, what contribution do you think social media is having? For the listeners, Jessica just rolled her eyes, and I get it, because my attitude about social media is very mixed. And I think it can be responsible for the loss of a lot of relationships because it's very easy to be a keyboard warrior. It's much harder to talk to somebody in reality and say, what you did hurt my feelings, or this is my truth. So let me go back because I doubt you remember that was kind of a little diatribe there. So first of all, what is the rupture repair cycle?
It's going to look different depending on the rupture and the repair, but ultimately what it means is conflict resolution. What is the thing that ruptured the relationship? What is the event, the word, the whatever that hurt the relationship, that put some sort of scarring or wounding to the bond? And then what do we do in order to repair that bond, in order to fix it or to make it better? There is this ancient artisan thing. It's the art is, I'm going to butcher it, but it's kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with lacquer mixed with gold, silver, or platinum. It's like if ceramic breaks or something, there's a way to repair it that actually makes it stronger. Um, that's kind of what human interpersonal relationships are. If there's a rupture, we have this beautiful ability to strengthen a connection. And if you repair properly, which means vulnerability, honesty, and accountability for yourself and to hold somebody else accountable, right? Your relationship comes out better than it was before the rupture. Every single time you have a rupture, it gives you an opportunity to connect further. It gives somebody an opportunity to understand you better. It gives you the opportunity to say, hey, I didn't realize that this thing that really bothered me was so deeply rooted for me. I have to go think about that. I'm going to talk to my therapist about it. I'm going to talk to my friends, whatever. And then I'm going to go to that person and I'm going to let them know this thing really hurt me. And then they get the opportunity to know you better, to behave accordingly. And they get an opportunity to reflect for themselves. Why did I say that? Why did I do that? It's this beautiful thing where you get to individually elevate yourself and as a connection, elevate.
Love the Kansugi concept. The idea that an argument, difficulty between two people actually strengthens the bond makes a whole lot of sense to me. You're talking about trust in relationships, and that trust will allow people to be vulnerable. And then that builds that kintsugi, a beautiful piece of ceramic that lasts for centuries because it's forged in heat and gold and silver and other precious metals. So that's a beautiful kind of concept to consider.
I feel like there's an element of trusting yourself too, that you have to be able to trust yourself. I can deal with the discomfort of this conversation. I have the skills to speak my mind. Most people are just afraid of conflict. And you learn that at a young age. You have to go back and reflect on what does conflict mean to me and where did I get this idea that conflict is a bad thing? Where does that come from? How do I dismantle
Yeah.
that?
So, part two of my question is, how does the social media cycle cause damage to relationships nowadays?
I think it depends what age you are, but in every sense of the word, it's damaging for everyone always. I am not usually so hyperbolic, but the good I can think of coming from social media is like the original goals, sharing your memories with your family that maybe lives far away or whatever. But so I also work with a lot of teenagers, and that's an ugly hellscape of social media. I learned the other day there's this unspoken rule, but when you post something, you have to be in your group chat. All of the people in your group chat have to agree to like it and comment on it. And if somebody doesn't like or comment on it, it's a social message of we're not good. And there's like all these hidden meanings. Emojis mean different things. The ability to DM somebody but not say that in person. It's like, well, Vanessa got 200 likes, but I got 400 likes. It's, listen, I could talk about this all day, but then you get into filters, you get into Photoshop and what that does to your sense of body image and all of that. But there's this thing where everything is supposed to be perfect. And if you're not perfect, then you're like unworthy. I was on a bachelorette trip recently and I was not posted in pictures of the one of the women who went on the bachelorette trip posted a bunch of pictures and I was only on like the side of one of them. And I went into a tailspin. I was like, everybody hated me. I was not fun. Everybody had a terrible time with me. And I wound up seeing that girl a few weeks later and she was so excited to see me, whatever. And I wanted to take the temperature in the room. Again, this thing with heat and cold. And I was like, did you have fun on the trip? Whatever. And she was like, oh, I had the best time with you. I was so upset. We don't have any pictures together. I made up all of these conclusions about our relationship based off of social media. And it was so silly. It was so stupid. We used to live in a world where you went to work, you did whatever you did, and then you went home, you went to sleep, and you did it over again, right? But now everybody has access to you all the time. And not only do they have access to you all the time, you're supposed to be being interesting and social all the time.
I mean, it's one of the inspirations of this podcast, which is being real over ideal. I have found myself rejecting having to be perfect and having to fit in on social media because actually, when you get a little older, what as a woman, you get ignored mostly, or you're insulted. You're old, you're this, you're that, whatever. And so I think that at the end of the day, you're kind of like painted into a corner. Either you sort of play the game and you get really popular and big, or you have something unusual to say and that'll do it sometimes, or you're controversial, which brings me back to our topic also in particular, because how do you fix relationships when there's actually an artificiality to them to begin with on social media? And I guess maybe having an understanding of what's a real relationship and what's a relationship that's sort of built on a foundation that's more esoteric is a good thing to consider as
Yeah,
well.
that's interesting. I have to think about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. My brain just keeps going to all the personal things of like my entire world went social media went virtual during COVID. And then how that kind of changed the landscape of my relationships and online relationships. Are they real? What is a real relationship? Is it just your ability to be real versus ideal? And if you're being real versus ideal on social media, are your relationships still authentic? There's so much. Oh my gosh, you just like broke my brain.
There's much more to talk about here. But incidentally, I have to believe that online relationships are real because, as an example, I only know you online and you recently got engaged. I'm so happy for you and your fiance. So I am going to put my vote in the column of online relationships are real. Anyway, let me ask you the untangle this question. Here's a listener question. My best friend and I stopped talking after a huge fight about politics. I miss her, but I still think what she said was harmful. Is it worth trying to reconnect, or am I just asking myself to be hurt some more? What do you think, Jess?
Instantly go to conversation versus debate, right? Did you have a conversation or did you have a debate? Because there are serious differences between the two. And your goal within your friendships should be that you're conversing, you're not debating. The point of a debate is to have a winner, it's to have a loser. And you don't want your friend to feel like a loser, right? You don't want to feel like a loser. The point of a conversation is simply to understand the other person and to have them understand you. It's not to convince them of a point or to have you be convinced of their point. It's simply to be. I ultimately feel really strongly that you're going to live a really lonely life if every time somebody has a different political agreement with you, you're going to cut them off. The friendship isn't worth it. Like, what kind of opinions are opinions? Morals and values are different, and you can have difference in opinions while still having the same ethical and moral codes. I would ask this listener to look within herself and reflect on if she is being judgmental or if she is truly feeling like there's a difference in value systems here and what is her boundary.
Excellent. I think that's a great answer for that listener. Well, this has been such a terrific conversation. I feel like I could talk about how to fix relationships all day, but I want to let you get back to your life. So thank you so much for appearing on the show, Jessica. I think you've given us some really great things to think about, helping the audience and myself understand ways to salvage relationships that are struggling. Such an awesome conversation. That's it for this episode of Real Over Ideal. If you're still here, this show is basically your people. We're glad you found us. Thank you so much to Jessica Cook for coming on to this episode. Our goal: mental health information that's actually useful, evidence based, reality checked, and never condescending. Catch you next time. And don't forget, keep it real over ideal.